travelers. Exorcism uses thaumaturgy and martial arts to conquer evil. There are other means to the same end, but they are not the true way.
Yeah, I've heard that line one too many times. So Chongyun is a character I feel a lot of people sleep on. Admittedly, I had a lot of issues trying to figure out his build way back in the day. But time has lent me experience, and I have returned to provide you all with a somewhat thorough overview of Chongyun, how to build him, and how to avoid the agony of figuring out which team to place him in. Chongyun's basic attack is a 4-string combo that deals physical damage. However, most of the time, Chongyun's going to actually be dealing a lot of cryo damage, and this is due to his elemental skill. When using Chongyun's elemental skill, he slams down a large field of ice that infuses your normal attacks with cryo. This is something of a double-edged sword. You see, the reason people skip out on Chongyun is very similar to the reasons people don't like C6 Bennett. Chongyun's infusion isn't limited to himself, it affects everybody. However, this isn't really as bad as some people make it out to be. For the longest time, I have been a big defender of Chongyun. Before Ayaka came around, he was the closest character we had to a cryo catalyst, and he makes ripping Fatui shields to shreds almost trivial. Now, where Ayaka's infusion is limited to herself, and this works well in an environment that requires a lot of control, Chongyun shares his infusion with the whole team and opens himself up to being an integral part of many non-Ganyu freeze teams. There might be some content creators out there that see Chongyun as so-so and doubt his placement in top teams within the meta, but I would like to direct your attention to none other than Corey Yi, the voice of Goro, who constantly demonstrates that a team of 4 stars is enough to 36-star the Abyss. And Chongyun is a major player in his team lineup. I know the team also consists of Bennett and Xingqiu, but Chongyun is the unsung hero in this composition because he really lays the foundation for its success and solidifies himself as a really great support character for Permafreeze team. So keeping this in mind, while many players shy away from Chongyun because of his skill, this is the wrong mindset to have when looking at him. Admittedly, I always decided that I would simply build Chongyun for combo damage and let him run the field independent of others. But the reality is Chongyun is a really great support character, and the best way to play him is to embrace his cryo infusion. There's some out there that swear that Chongyun actually enhances Kaching's status as a 5-star character when adding her to a permafreeze roster. For Chongyun's burst, he summons 3 giant blades that surround and slam down on enemies within a small circle. And Chongyun's burst is insane. The scaling isn't as high as his skill, but what the number screen isn't telling you is that the damage you deal is for each sword that Chongyun summons. That means at C6, Chongyun's burst deals quadruple damage. Some very smart players have recognized that Amber's burst has a very strong pyro aura. This aura is so strong, in fact, that Chongyun's burst deals melt damage with each one of his swords. The damage potential of this guy is absolutely insane. Between these two using their bursts back to back, I was destroying Kairagi left and right. Inazuma stood no chance against them. In addition to Amber, Chongyun's insane burst gets even more insane when combined with the likes of Mona. Something about one-shotting the Pyro Cube with their combined forces is very satisfying to me. Do not underestimate the power of his burst, he is no joke. Chongyun's passive allows for faster attack speeds and an extra instance of damage when his Frost Layer leaves the field. Not only that, but with Chongyun's second constellation, he allows all party members within his Frost Layer quicker skill recasts. In my mind, this really solidifies him as a support. Chongyun, as a support, allows him to set up layers of foundation for your other team members, meaning a lot of the time, especially in permafreeze teams, Chongyun sets his frost layer and moves to the back to allow your other characters to shine, coming back every now and again to remind evil spirits to cower with his fearsome burst. A really good set that really strengthens this type of playstyle is the Noblesse Oblige set. Now, if your aim isn't to use Chongyun as your buffer, feel free to mix up your Noblesse set with 2 pieces of the Blizzard Strayer. Though, if you're feeling like you can unlock more damage by using Chongyun in a quad reverse melt situation, you could opt for 2 pieces of Wanderer's Troop instead. However, the 2-piece Strayer and 2-piece Noblesse are ideal for most situations involving permafreeze lineups. It gives him the most flexibility as far as being a support unit as well. It is by far Chongyun's best set. For you Chongyun mains out there who perhaps don't really have a Mona or a freeze team to coordinate Chongyun's efforts with, but still feel like he can hang out in the back, the 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Blizzard Strayer is a happy medium. His burst won't hit as hard, but it allows Chongyun's skill damage to shine. If you want to lay down that Frost Layer and start swinging, however, you might notice that Chongyun's combo damage is a bit lacking. While many other characters out there have found bigger and better sets to move on to, Chongyun is one of the few characters who still benefit the largest from the 4-piece Gladiator set. He loses out on skill and burst damage, but the extra 25% damage dedicated to his basic attacks really beef them up far beyond what your Blizzard set can do. That said, Chongyun doesn't quite excel at being a main DPS. Perhaps a sub-DPS is more his style. But with the inclusion of our newest character Shenhe, this might all be changing.
These two are disciples of the art of exorcism, and their efforts combined bring out the best in one another. You see, Shenhe's elemental skill allows her to buff the damage of all normal attacks that deal cryo damage. Well, she can buff skill and burst damage too, but unless you have Ayaka, chances are you're not really going to be using her to her fullest potential, especially since her buff doesn't work on herself. Shenhe is something of a support character herself. She doesn't really focus on dealing her own personal damage, or at least this is how it appears at face value. However, Chongyun is the key to unlocking her full potential. It's a little strange for sure that a 5-star character requires such a specific 4-star character to draw out her max potential, but it's returned in full. With Chongyun's Frost Layer lasting almost the same amount of time as Shenhe's Quill buff, you can deal amazing combo damage with Chongyun, but he also allows Shenhe to benefit from her own buff before her skills expire. With this interaction, Shenhe enhances Chongyun's performance as a DPS unit, meaning it might actually be worth it for Chongyun mains to use the Gladiator set. Chongyun and Shenhe are amazing teammates that buff each other, and her release is going to give a lot more recognition to this little exorcism gatekeeping weirdo. So my advice for you, build your Shenhe as a DPS unit. I dare you. People will tell you not to do it. They'll tell you to fully invest in her attack, but I say treat her as a DPS unit who strikes last. Because if you pair her and Chongyun together, you will not regret it. With Chongyun, Shenhe can benefit from her own support, and that is something that is a little unusual thus far for support characters. They usually have to sacrifice being the star of the show to bring out the strengths of other characters. But since a grateful Chongyun returns the favor, Shenhe can come back stronger and benefit from her own buff. It just requires a little teamwork. So, I hope you enjoyed this look at Chongyun, the characters who strengthen him, the team that he brings strength to, and a glance of Chongyun's ability to turn a 5-star support character into a DPS unit. With Shenhe's release, our boy might get far more use, and I look forward to seeing more people excited to play him. With that said, I'm gonna end this video here. Until next time, traveler, stay tuned.